The time is now 6:30. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Tonight, Ms. Sherry Spruill will lead us in prayer, and I ask everyone please stand for the pledge. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us as we get ready for our regular scheduled agenda. At this time, we'll go ahead and start with item 1 on the agenda. Let's consider approval of minutes of the regular May 4th, 2021 meeting and special May 11th, 2021 meeting.
After reviewing the minutes of the regular session, May 4th meeting and special session on May the 11th, I'll make a motion that we approve as presented.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Tim Dale, second by Mr. Henry Chappelle. Madam Secretary, please record the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
This motion carries unanimously. We'll now close item 1 on the agenda, and we'll now move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is our oath of office for mayor, council member of place 1 and place 2. Mr. Kerry Wooten, would you join us up front?
If you would, insert your name in the blank here, and then there's one other place, council member or mayor, place whatever. If you would, raise your right hand, please, that I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Thank you. Of the city of Mount Pleasant, state of Texas. And I will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of the state of Texas, and the charter and the ordinances of the city of Mount Pleasant, Texas, and furthermore solemnly swear that I have not directly or indirectly paid, offered, or promised to pay, contributed, nor promised to contribute any money, valuable thing, or promised any public office or employment as a reward for the giving or withholding of a vote at the election which I was elected to secure my appointment. So help me God.
2 more years.
Okay, we have now got that over with. That was we've had an interesting last 2 years, and the council has been through its up and downs, but we have persevered through it all, and I want to thank you all for standing behind a great council, and as we move forward, we look forward to you supporting us even more. Thank you. Okay, we will now close item 2 on the agenda and move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is our financial report. Ms. McKell Reeves.
Thank you, council. Welcome to our new councilman. Looking forward to working with y'all for another couple years, so congratulations.
Thank you.
The financial for the cash balances are there as well. We are about 58% through the budget year with approximately 42% remaining. We worked on tonight, we're bringing for you our 6-month biannual budget amendment. The largest source of revenue is the sales tax, as everybody knows. We are about, we did 11.44% over budget this month, and it was about 13.34% above prior year. We contend to look really well for our sales tax projections this year. So we continue to monitor that. Property tax, we're about 95.94% of collections. Again, most of our revenue comes in for property tax in January and February. And so we are really good. We have about $95,000 left to collect in property tax. So we're looking really good on that. Fines and fees, we've started implementing some new collection taxes on bringing some of that revenue in. We collected about $21,000 above budget this month, and we're about 33% above budget. So it's not bringing us back on target just yet, but I'm optimistic that if we continue on this path, then hopefully we'll at least meet budget. So we're working really hard with the collection agency and getting back on target with our fines and fees. So utility fund revenues, we have received quite a bit of rain, as you all know. So this month we were down a little bit. March was up about 11% and April was down about 11%. So when you average them, it's about 0.32%. So I think it was just maybe a little bit of difference in my monthly budgeting because it's kind of a guesstimate, as you all know. So when you put the two together, it kind of averaged out. Sewer sales, of course, was down about 6% below budget. Again, we have had a lot of rain, so we're going to continue to monitor that every month, and I'll bring y'all back up to date with that again next month, and we'll see how we are on that. Sanitation, it's about 3.67% above budget, and it's about 4% above prior year, so trash is still doing pretty well. Overall, I think we're doing really well on our financial statements, and I'll take any questions that y'all may have.
McKellen, I've got some questions. Just off the top of my head, and I don't need 100% exact numbers, but I'm thinking the money that we hold on the project at the park project out here is about $330,000, and then we have an additional $110,000 grant that we're waiting to bring in. We have $111,000 that we're waiting on the grant, and
we're holding about $239,000.
139, so that's,
And that grant is from the Texas Parks and Wildlife concerning those two $500,000 grants.
Yes, sir.
Okay, council, we have any further questions on this item? Okay, thank you, Mikhail, for that financial report. At this time, we'll go ahead and close item 3 and move on to item 4 on the agenda. Item 4 is to consider approval of ordinance 2021-7, amend fiscal year 2020-2021 budget.
Mayor and council, I know this is something kind of new for this city, but typically what you want to do is after 6 months into your budget, you want to go back through, look at how you're doing, and then you want to look forward to see what you need for the rest of the year. If you're having some savings, you want to pull those numbers back and put those in your fund balance. If you got any additional revenue, you want to bring that into your budget and utilize it where you need it. So for us, as you know, we received our CARES grant funding. We received part of it last year. We received the rest of it this year, which was about $712,000. So I'm bringing that $712,000 into our budget. $539,000 of it's going into the general fund to reimburse us for the wages that we've already paid out. $209,000 of that is going into utility fund to reimburse the wages that have been paid out there. In addition, we also received some insurance proceeds for the winter storm. $259,000 of that reimbursement for that insurance proceeds is going into the utility fund to offset some of the cost of the repairs to the water and treatment plant. And then some of those proceeds are also going into the general fund to reimburse the cost of the repairs to the park. So if you look at the summary sheets, you can see where we're bringing in that revenue into both the general fund and into the utility fund. In addition to that, on the general fund, there was some projects that we had allocated last year in last year's budget that didn't get finished in last year's budget, and so we're just carrying over that money into this year's budget. One of those was an $86,800 lift that we had allocated for the fleet management, and they started it, did not get paid for or completed, and it was for them to be able to lift the big heavy dump trucks and the fire trucks. And so we went ahead and brought that money forward. It was $86,800.
Yeah, you may remember that we discussed this right before this year's budget started, and we ear tagged some funds that we had left over from last year's budget, and said we've got enough to buy that and pay for that. It just didn't get finished, as she was saying, till the next budget. So you don't just automatically carry money over. You have to. So we spent some of that in last year's budget, and we had to carry money over to finish putting it. I think it's all put in, but we had to bring money over. So that's what this is doing. It's already been approved. We already have the money. We just have to approve it in this year's budget. And this is a lift for the shop that picks up the trucks. It's not, when we say it, exactly, it's not like a forklift or something like that, just for the public knowledge. This is for use in the shop to raise and work on trucks. Councilman Dale wanted to make sure it wasn't the skid steer, I think.
And that work has been completed, Miguel?
Yes, sir, it has. If you'd like to stop by the shop, I'm sure Chris would love to show it off to y'all. In addition, the roof work that y'all approved in last budget, I believe it was around $332,000. We completed most of that work in this budget, and so we had to carry over the funds that were approved for that in last budget into this budget. And so there was some additional funds brought forward as well to complete the work on the police station. As y'all recall, last budget we had talked about allocating some money, and that money had been set aside in last budget to complete the leaky roof repairs over at the police department. And also, there was some money for playground equipment that we had set aside last year. It took a little bit longer with COVID to get that playground equipment ordered and put in. So again, that was just money that we had already allocated in last year's budget that I'm just carrying over to this year's budget to balance the budget. So again, if you'll see that there's $716,000 of CARES grant money that's being allocated in between all of the lines for the salaries, in addition to some insurance money, insurance proceeds of about $80,945 from the winter storm. It's going into various lines to fix for all the different avenues of stuff that's been broken and torn from the winter storm.
Mikhail, did the insurance proceeds take care of everything, or was we still out some?
We were still out a little bit of money, approximately $70-something thousand. We're still out, and then I'm working right now with them with FEMA to try and get reimbursed for that. They keep extending the deadlines because they keep changing the requirements, and so right now you're having to put it in 3 different modules right now to try and get reimbursed, and I put it all in one module, and then I put it in the second module. Now they're wanting it in a different way in a third module. So I'm working on putting all that stuff in so we can try to get the additional amount. Now they've said there's some other stuff that we may qualify for, the overtime that everybody's worked. So we're trying to maybe get some of that back. So during this period of time, yes. Yes, I do. I feel pretty confident. I was on a call earlier today talking a little bit about that. There's also, they've opened up a grant for generators. They've allocated a little over $40 million for all these cities that were without power. Although they're doing it based on the number of cities that went without power the longest. So since we never did lose power, they told me to go ahead and put it in. I don't know how likely we are going to be to get funded because we never did lose power, but I'm going to try to get it anyway.
It's interesting in that we didn't lose power in the community, but we did lose power to our water plant that made the pressure go down below about 40% of what we could do with electricity pumping because we didn't have a big enough generator there, which caused us to lose pressure in the city, but also out around in Tri-Sud. And if you remember, they had to boil water. So it seems like we ought to be able to write up something that shows that it's an emergency to have a generator at our water plant, even if we're in the dark in the city. We lost it even though we had electricity everywhere else. We lost the plant, and that was very critical. Yeah, it was very critical. So we're going to try to see if we can't get.
And I'll definitely get with everybody, and we're going to write all that up and try to put as much documentation and stuff as we can to try to get some of that. But I think we're going to try real hard and try to get some of those generator money that they have out, and that's just for the state of Texas. So they're allocating different amounts for different states, and that's just for us. So hopefully we'll be able to get some money for some generators. Yes, it's FEMA money. And they're giving it to it in a 75-25, so it's 75% we have to pay. 25% we have to pay, and 75% they pay. So, but I think that's that's better than not having to pay for a full generator ourselves. So, I'm working on several different grants, trying to get several different avenues, and if I get those, then I'll bring those back to y'all to request permission to apply for them. But I'm getting all the information I can. I'm also working on our second round of American Recovery funding, the $3.7 million that we've been told that we're eligible for. So we're just trying to get any help that we can get to try to bring us up to a state of readiness. So,
Mikhail, when you get a chance, can you provide us like a chart that shows all the capital projects or any projects that we have that are still outstanding? I see right now we got the Pilgrims Community Center and the sports complex, but just a quick high level, just so we can help keep us all stay on top and keep track of what's out there so we don't lose sight of what's going on.
We asked our engineering, and Andrew to make a Gantt chart or a flow chart that shows all of those and what their timeline is and where we are on the construction of them. And of course, you can get some of that information, look about how much we've spent on them, because that'll tell you about how, but they're gonna get that together so that you all have it. We can update it monthly, so you know where we are in all the projects. We have quite a few. We can think of a couple of big ones, but when you sit down and write them down, there's a lot of projects that have.
Right, and I just don't want us to, overlook any of the smaller ones as well. And like I said, there's quite a few out there, and I would just like to see every time we come in, when we do these reports, that I can look and take a glance at what we have going on, where they are within the timeline, and what's outstanding, et cetera.
Yeah, I have the water and sewer projects listed in the 605, and then I have the street project and I have the park project. So I usually give you 3 different ones that have the projects by dollar amount on them. So, but I will put them all on one sheet if that helps.
Thank you, Mikhail. Okay.
Y'all have any other questions on the budget amendment?
Okay, since there's no further questions, floor is open for a motion.
I'll move budget amendment ordinance 2021-7.
And I will second that.
We have a motion made by Mr. Galen Adams, second by Mr. Henry Chappelle. Madam Secretary, please record the vote.
Aye.
Uh,
Aye.
This motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Reeves.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Mikhail.
We will now go ahead and close item 4 on the agenda and move on to item 5. Item 5 is to consider approval of ordinance 2021-5, amending the City of Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinance Title 9, General Regulations, Chapter 96, Food and Food Establishments, so as to add a new section 96.13, food trucks. Mr. Robert?
Mayor and council, congratulations on being reelected. Good to see you in the new year.
Thank you, sir.
This is an ordinance we put together that's kind of based on some other cities and some things directly from Mount Pleasant that we put in. We were directed by council to bring basically a food truck ordinance. I think I'm going to go to the very end of it because I think that's the thing that was a questionable thing that we had talked to Carrie about really the definition of this, how we delineate that from the mobile truck service, the mobile food that we have out in the about to go to different companies that are invited by these companies. They get a permit. That's what they do. They go from location to location. How we wanted to delineate what a food truck is in this definition that a food truck is defined as a vehicle, including trailers. And I know that was something we wanted to put in there to make sure that it included trailers. Equipped with facilities for cooking and selling food that is located on a private parcel of land occupied by an existing business and for the daily sales to the public, and it does not move from location to location. That's a sort of a, I think, a fundamental part of this is that when the food truck will come in, and part of the requirement is to give us a, not an elaborate, but give us a plan, a site plan, indicating where they're going to be located on that lot, how it's going to circulate, how they're going to circulate with the existing traffic. Do they have enough functional parking there to accommodate a food truck? So there's a lot of criteria. It's not just pulling into a company with a mobile truck and then moving off. That's not where we consider these things. These are things that have to come and get permitted. There are a number of other requirements that you've seen in the packet or in the memo that I've indicated to you. A lot of those deal with the fact that they have to be at a property, that they have permission from the property owner. There need to be bathrooms there. They have to be able to utilize some existing bathrooms that are on site.
How far in advance are we requiring them to get this permit and to notify the city before going on premises with their service truck?
We didn't put anything exactly, but they need to come in the day before, basically. They can't come in at 9 o'clock in the morning. No, we can't have that. We'll have to make an inspection. We'll have to go to the site. they've got to have a number of documents, food management certificates, Texas sales tax permit. They got to show us their vehicle registration, all the things, liability insurance. No, once they've established themselves here, once we've got that information and we got it on record, then when they come back, if a different location, then it's a locational permit then, saying, well, yeah, if it's a different place they want to go to, then we'll get a different locational permit. Again, there are a number of things on there, and John Akram and I worked on some of the building code things that we need to put in place, and that has to do with life safety. If they've got cooking equipment, they're producing grease, then they need the type 1 hood and those things that are just really life safety issues, have the fire extinguisher, and they can't use any portable grills or anything like that, equivalent like that. And again, we want them to have the grading card and the health food permit that we require restaurants to have. It's the same kind of thing, situation there. But and again, they can't hook up to a water supply. They have to use on site in their vehicle, and then they'll dispose of that accordingly. Really, that's pretty much everything that's in here. I don't want to go through all these things, but I think we've got pretty comprehensive ordinance that I think can govern them. But the main thing too, we're trying to over-regulate other than for life safety and health issues, because we didn't want to get into effectively having to go out and they're getting such a detailed ordinance that make it difficult to enforce, and then having to go out, when you did enforce it, do something about it. So I think this ordinance is good enough, and it covers all the areas that we need, but maybe won't over-restrict people from having a food truck in the city.
In your research, how common are these in the other cities in the area?
Well, this was pulled from a city that I knew I'd worked with before. A lot of the smaller cities are starting to have food, and a lot of the bigger cities, obviously, Dallas and the big cities have food truck ordinance. It'd be common. The only thing I would say that some of the cities, not necessarily here, we did allow in here for the ability to go to a public park in the city with a permit from the parks director and get a locational permit out there. That would be kind of designating an area that you could do it in. Some cities have actually designated areas that they may own, pieces of land, and they've set up areas that are designated specifically for food trucks. Austin's a prime example of that. But that's basically the research I've done. I've just looked at other cities and kind of gleaned what I thought was pretty clean ordinance, and we added some stuff to it.
They're not in competition with I'm going to call it the organization, the soccer or the baseball or softball organizations that do that make a lot of their income off of their concessions. They're at home premises. They're not in, the food service truck won't be in competition with them during the regular routine ball playing, I call it. This will just be for special tournaments, et cetera, like that.
No, that's strictly, on public parks, I mean, that's strictly a thing where probably the parks, when they would come in and ask for that, it would be associated with a special event in a park. If we were having some kind of event out there, or if a group of people wanted to have an event at the park and they asked for a food truck to be out there, it would be a special event, and the parks director would be able to do that. But not in competition with any organized sporting activity that's already out there.
Thank you.
This would be similar to like our vendors when we have events downtown, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good example of it. Let's say for instance Christmas, when we had I guess it was sort of a truck that was parked down there and served different things there. Kind of a thing where it would be a kind of a special event. The city would be involved in that one. And there's a good example where you may want more than one of those trucks down there. It'd be kind of nice during those events to have a variety of those kind of food items available to the public on special events.
Robert, I got a couple safety questions or concerns. I don't want us to make assumptions here, and I didn't see it in this particular ordinance proposal, but I think it would be wise for the trucks or trailers to make sure wherever they're setting up that they are set up in their level and that all the wheels are chalked, or the proper wheels are chalked, because we don't want to assume that the owner of that vehicle or that trailer is going to do that. We need to ensure that for the safety of the people that will be surrounding that trailer or truck during that event or that activity. also, depending on what that event or activity is, you know, are we gonna limit the number of trucks or trailers to set up? And if so, how close can they be to each other, or how far apart do they need to be from each other? So those are just a couple of things that I was thinking about for this particular ordinance.
Well, I think special events, that'll cure itself to simply, if it's a large event and it's at a public facility, for instance, one of our parks or whatnot. I know there's an event down here at this convention center area that we have that probably will have a number of trucks there, but they will turn in a plan, and we'll base the plan on the spacing based on their site plan. That's how we'll govern that. I don't think there's a set rule, because we don't know how they're going to function until we see the whole layout of a special event and the circulation pattern. Chalking the wheels and whatnot, we could do that in this ordinance. I think that's something we could look at when we go and inspect it. I'm a little hesitant to write it into the ordinance. But if you do, but if you write something you can't enforce, and that's the issue, I would say that that's the kind of detail that if we go out and have to enforce it, and they're not ready to enforce it, then we're asking them to move it, or revoking their permit, which I think we'd have more problem with that, Chappelle. I think we're going to have to, it's just an opinion, but I think trying to make them do that is going to force the enforcement officers to be out there looking at it. We're not going to be out there on the weekends. I mean, it's going to be difficult for us to enforce something like that. It's an opinion, and I've already talked to code enforcement officers about that. I think we're going to, if we put that in the ordinance, then we'll have to make sure it's there, and that's a problem.
I don't see that being a problem. I'd rather do that than for us to have an issue, a liability issue, where we have an event and one of those trailers breaks loose and starts rolling and rolls over an individual. I don't see why we can't put that in an ordinance and enforce that during that inspection time. And if they go out there later and that chalk is not there, then they're in violation of the ordinance, and you can fine them at that point. But if we don't put it in black and white, you're making the assumption they're going to be responsible to chalk that. We can't make any assumptions here.
I would think, not knowing these food service trucks, but I would think most of these trailers and all probably have some type of a leveling, where they put down a jack or something to make them stable.
That's one, but you still need it. It can still roll, depending. You know, if they're not sitting on exact level ground, you're assuming they're going to go to a parking lot that's exactly level. They might be sitting on a parking lot that's got a little bit of incline. They have to at least chalk the wheels, even if it's sitting in what appears to be with the naked eye a level parking lot. You have to practice safety.
Henry, could I just suggest this, maybe to speed it up a little bit? That you look at the people that provide these trucks, or the dealers and the manufacturers, see what they recommend about that kind of thing, as far as that, and then maybe incorporate something. Because sometimes there's industry standards about things that they're just industry standards. You know, that's the way they are. So we might do that and see what they recommend on that, and incorporate that into this ordinance sometime. That might solve some of the issue. Just cross it, because I don't know what exactly to put in there exactly. But you can get that kind of stuff from the people that do that and say, this is what's recommended for, you know, in this particular deal, and use that as a standard.
Well, I understand that, but like in my line of work, we have trailers, but we deal with heavy equipment and all every day. It doesn't matter where we park and stop that trailer. When it's stopped, they get out and chalk the trailer, the wheels on the trailer. So I think we should look at it the same way. Again, we're looking at liability, you know, issues here that potentially come up for the city. And I'm just throwing it out there to let you know, I think we need to at least explore that option about whether it is in here or not, but they need to at least have the wheels chalked.
One of the,
And see that, you know, in other ordinances, that they got into that level of detail for that reason. But I think that Kerry maybe is saying is that we don't know, you know, each trailer. I mean, chalking wheels is, you know, it's pretty common to do that. But, you know, it's more of an enforcement issue. If we write something that we have to go out and enforce, and not everybody's doing it equally, I think we're going to create an issue from an enforcement standpoint. That's all I'm just trying to tell you. If we have to go out and enforce it, then we'll have to enforce it on everybody across the board. And if somebody is in violation, then we'll have to, what the penalty be, we'll revoke their permit, make them leave. I don't know exactly what we would do at that point. We just need to figure out what we would do. And if you're talking about a fine, And we're really not gonna make them, technically, if they're in violation, you'd have to revoke the permit, and make them leave the site. I mean, I don't know what else you could do with it.
But you're already stating in here that you need them to have a fire suppression system and the code about what electrical and water they can use. I don't see what putting one more item in there about having chalk wheels is gonna affect here. I think it's all for a win-win for everybody.
Of course, now this fire prevention stuff with these vent hoods and all that, that's pretty much state mandated. That's something with deep fryer that's got to be. But sometimes also in this, I think common sense enters the picture too with these guys on these rigs, and I'm sure they run anywhere from, I don't have no idea exactly what the costs are, but some of them are rather expensive, and I'm going to say they're going to take care of their pretty much. And I understand what you're saying, but sometimes you can almost overregulate. You can, and I'm not saying that's what we're trying to do here, but I think that is a factor, and it's better to look at it before than after. But I don't really foresee myself now that being and I agree with what Robert's saying. It's going to be hard to enforce, and who's going to be enforced and what's going to be the penalty, and you might recommend that to them when they come in and do and get their food, get their permit. You might be something that you just recommend to them that, hey, FYI, y'all do chalk your trailers or your vehicles, and you just remind them as a reminder, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm sorry that I keep bringing this up, but how's that any more harder to enforce than telling them they gotta have the proper water and the proper electrical connections and the fire suppression? I don't understand why y'all are saying that it's gonna be a hard thing to enforce. I think it needs to be there, whether there's a fine or not. My point being is the chalk wheels need to be in place. It's a safety deal. You do not want that trailer rolling off, and we can't make assumptions that the person who owns that rig is gonna automatically put chocks on their wheels. We're making assumptions here. We need to make sure that is written in black and white and that they adhere to that. It's that simple.
I have a question.
We'll be glad to put anything you want in the ordinance. I have no problem with doing that. I'm just trying to tell you, I've had a lot of experience in code enforcement, and I don't think it's wise to put things in the code or in your ordinance that ultimately become an enforcement issue. That's the only, it's not about doing it. It's about making sure that it's fair across the board. And then the aftermath, if they're not doing it, what are we going to do at that point?
I have a question, sorry. If the vendor has proof of insurance, doesn't the insurance cover this particularly?
Well, whenever they come in, when we do the initial inspection, generally either they're going to go to the site or we may even have them have a place where we go see the trailer before they site the trailer. We're talking about the building code issues they have with the vent hood and the fire extinguisher. We're not going to let them go out to the site if that stuff's not already in place. We're going to have to look at that. They're going to be a food truck person. They're going to have to show us what they have. And we have the documentation of liability, their insurance, their sales tax. All those things have to be the day before or 2 days or a week before, whatever. We have to see all that information before we let them go out. Can we tell them to chalk the wheels? Yeah. We could definitely go out there and make an inspection. I don't know what happens if we're not there on a weekend, we don't see it, and there's a violation. And if we wanted it in the ordinance, we'll be glad to put it in there for you.
But doesn't the insurance cover it?
They're going to be a liability insurance on the vehicle, yeah. There's liability insurance. And so and on the other side of it too is the property owners. He has to get permission from the property owner. The property owner is going to have liability insurance on his property as a business. So he's liable also. It isn't just the food truck person. It's the liability of the property. He's got the risk just as much. Matter of fact, he's probably got more of the risk from letting a person come onto his property and operate. So he's taking the risk himself.
I think that if we want to put it in, I'm with you, Robert. We can put it in, and the one of the problems we have is the enforcement, and our code guys aren't out on the weekends all the time, but Lieutenant Denny is always everywhere, and because I mentioned this to a council member earlier that we may have to ask that the police go by occasionally if we get calls that people are in violation of the ordinance, and especially if we tell somebody you got to pack up and leave. We probably need Officer Denny more than one of our code officers to do that. It's gonna be hard to do. I think that if we say we want to put this in there, we need to put down what do we do, and in other words, what's the penalty if you don't do it and we catch you without it, or is it you got to leave? You just got to chalk them and be okay. If some have them blocked and the other ones don't, and then we come in and say, well, if you just do it, you're okay, and they may want the other ones to leave, so we may get into that thing too. So it comes down, like Robert says, to the enforcement and what kind of things. And let me tell you, working with you guys and council members for 40 some years, but with you guys for the last 2 years or almost 2 years, we kind of want to side on the side of mercy and not make a big deal out of everything and kind of go with the punches. And but we need to know what to do if we find somebody out there without chalked wheels. What do? We mandate it? Do we put a big fine on them? What do we do? And is that making too big a deal out of not too much or what?
Well, the only thing I would tell you too, this gets into being competitive. And what is a chalk? Well, then when they chalk, if one guy's doing it, the next guy, I'll just tell you, when a competitor comes in, he sees a food truck out there, and then he sees he's getting beat out by another food truck, and he goes over there, you don't have your wheels chalked. I'm calling code enforcement. You'll get into that back and forth, tit for tat, and that's the only reason. I respect everything you said about this. If council wants me to put this in there, we'll put it in there. But that's the only fear I would have about this competitive thing, and having to enforce it, realistically.
We talked about this earlier, about some of these things that you would ask people to do. Like you said, it's common sense. We need you to chalk your wheels and make sure it's level, that kind of thing. We can still ask them to do that and say, we expect you to do that without putting an enforcement thing on it.
We can have a handout, and we can put that in a handout, and we'll put it in there and say, these are some other additional safety precautions that we recommend you do, if that would suffice. And if they don't necessarily get penalized, but we will ask them to do that. And if we go out there and see it, we can suggest it. And I would think, like Kerry said, I don't know, how trailers, or if they leave them on the truck, I don't know what they would do. A truck's a different story than a trailer. I agree with what you're saying too, that you want to make sure where it's at and it's leveled, etc. And those are things we might be able to do as we go out and make an inspection at the site. We could do that.
No, I like that, and I wanted to respond to what Councilman Walker said about insurance. One thing insurance will do in this case, if there is an issue that happens where a trailer or a truck rolls and causes issues, the first thing they're going to ask is, was the vehicle chalked? And so just to let you know, they won't cover an issue. If the vehicle or trailer was not chalked and it causes death to an individual or injury to property, they're not going to cover it. So that's why I'm bringing that up.
If it's on our property, whoever's property is on is going to get sued as well as it doesn't matter whether they got insurance or not. If it's not on our property, we may not have any liability, but if it is, we might.
If you elect for us to put it in it, we'll put it in. No problem.
I think what you had just stated as far as making it a suggestion as part of further safety precautions, I think that's sufficient. And I really feel like it's time to move on from this topic at this time. Okay, at this time,
I want to be clear. Are
go ahead.
we going to?
You-
I appreciate the back and forth. So what are we going to do at this point about chalking wheels?
As we just stated, that's something that we can visit and then discuss as far as the council, at a further time before we decide to go into redoing the ordinance as far as adding it in or whatever. But if you guys want to make a decision on that, I mean, you have to make it in that motion.
As this is presented tonight, it's not in this, so we have to
right.
redo this if we want that added.
If you're making it in the motion, then it's we'll add it as part of it.
I personally think it's going to be good enough if you put that in your documentation that you give a vendor that we're recommending that to them. I mean, personally, I think that's good enough.
Yeah, Robert, I think, with that said, at this point, if you have a packet put together with what is required, that you have something in there and like bold, highlighted, or just, you know, along those lines that also mentions, please chalk your wheels, or just recommended you chalk your wheels while on site.
Yeah, I don't know that we've developed a separate food truck application, which have all this stuff in it, and this would be as a handout, so we could put that in the actual application and make it, you know, like I said.
I think that'd be good enough.
I have a question though about liability insurance. It's my understanding that when a trailer is hooked to a vehicle, then their liability is extended from the vehicle that pulls it. They will have to provide proof of insurance on that trailer as a food truck trailer, not just an extension, because once they unhook their towing vehicle, then I know in our case, there's no insurance on our trailers unless they're being towed by one of our vehicles.
All we've got is the liability on the vehicle, so I'm not, once it's hooked up to the vehicle, I'm not an expert at that, so I don't really know that answer exactly. When you unhook it from the vehicle.
I didn't know since it's a food service truck, if, I don't know, but my question is we need to make sure, because a lot of these are going to be food trailers and not food trucks probably, and once they're not being towed, we need to make sure that there's liability insurance on that trailer as it sits alone somehow.
Well, that's what we said in the ordinance, basically. You've got to have liability insurance. It's regarding trailers and/or trucks.
Not the vehicle that's necessarily pulling one, but I know what you're saying, Sherry. As far as pulling a trailer behind it, it's attached with your vehicle insurance. But in this instance, this is a food service trailer for the purpose, and you've got in there liability insurance concerning that trailer or food service truck, whichever the case may be, is the way I read it now.
That's the way I understood it. You know, that's the way I'm trying to understand it. It's part of your liability insurance, whether you've got it as a vehicle. I'm not sure what they've seen. I haven't seen the liability insurance on those trailers, so I've not seen that.
The form that you create in the packet, do you state that they have to, and then the person sign it?
Everything will be included that you see in this ordinance. It'll be a packet that's handed out to them. All the requirements for the food truck, everything that's in this ordinance will be given to them in the packet with that in it, in addition to what we talked about on the permit about chalking the wheels and whatnot. So.
Okay, if we have no further questions, the floor will be open for a motion to be made.
I'll make a motion that we approve this ordinance 2021-5, amending the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances, Title 9, General Regulation, Chapter 96, Food and Food Establishment, so that we can add the new Section 96.13, Food Service Trucks, as presented tonight.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Tim Dale. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Was that you, Henry? Okay. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Tim Dale, a second by Mr. Henry Chappelle. Madam Secretary, please report a vote.
Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-1. Okay. We have a motion that was made, votes with 4 votes yes, with 1 councilman sustained.
Thank you,
Okay.
Robert.
Thanks, Robert. We appreciate you. We'll go ahead and now close that item and move on to our next item on the agenda. Item 6 is to consider approval of ordinance 2021-8, amending the City of Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinance, Title 9, General Regulations, Chapter 98, Streets and Sidewalks, Section 98.105, changing street names application. Robert.
This is a pretty simple thing that we've done. We've just basically taken an additional section that's already in the application requirement for this. And we just, as you see in the packet, we just added a D section called exemption. And that just says that an application may not be filed to change a street name that has been previously given recognition by city council. And that could be a person's name, it could be if council had given a certain place recognition, it could be a number of different things. However, whatever council would give that recognition out to whoever it may be or whatever it may be. I don't know exactly what that could be, but it could be a historic place in the city that they call it something after that. But whatever that may be, then that would allow that council's stand and person couldn't bring an application forward to make that change of that after it being recognized as something in the city.
We talked about sub-streets are named Pecan Street or whatever. It may not be named after a person, but there are some times where we honor something, a thing or an event or whatever, name it, after an organization like the Pilgrims Community Center or something like that. So anytime we do that, that's what this ordinance says, that we don't change the name that's already been honored, and something's been honored, family or whatever. And you can change names that aren't attached with that, but not that. So that was based on a recommendation from the council to bring this back.
Do we have record already of street names that have been previously recommended and approved by the council?
I don't know if we know that they've been recommended by the council, but one of the thing we got into before was a request to change a name for somebody, and it was a person's name. And I think it just got brought up that some cities have such of an ordinance here, and said, we don't know if this is for a person or not. And then one of y'all said, because he's really old, said, I remember when this happened, and it was to honor a person, another person in the community. So because of his memory, we didn't do it. You guys maybe remember that not too long ago. And so from here on out, we would make a note that the names were changed because of to honor somebody. And if you all know of any, remember any of that, we could maybe do some of those, and we'll try to, from this time forward, keep that information.
I know that some cities, through the plating process, city councils have the ability to actually put street names on plats. You know, they come in. A lot of times the developer will come in, but the developer will ask for suggestions. And the city council has an opportunity. I've noticed, went around and looked at some of the mayor's names, and I noticed some of the streets are named after a lot of the mayors in town. Or prominent people that were in the city. When that occurs, when these new subdivisions come in, that happens a lot, where they find people that they want to, that recognize, and then they put their names on the streets. I think that would be another form of recognition if a council approved a plat and it recognized those names that were on there at that time. I believe that's the same thing. It's a kind of a form of it.
I agree, and we have several of those that was named after maybe the person that developed it, maybe the last family name or something like that. And that's why I think that would be very applicable to do with the naming. And a lot of streets are named after people that today's generation may not realize or know who they were, past council members years ago. And there's a few in the audience out there that will remember some of those. But it's still, I think it's important to keep that, because they was important at that time, and they still are to us. They made a significant contribution to the city or the county at that time, and they was recognized and thought enough of to name a street after. And 40 years later, say, well, I don't remember who that was or who that. I think this is a good thing.
Yeah, I think there's a history lesson always if you've got a street name out there and your grandkid comes to ask you who is that, what is that, who is that person, and so it's good to keep that history going.
There's no further questions or comments. We'll leave the floor open for a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-8, amending the City of Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances, Title 9, General Regulations, Chapter 98, Streets and Sidewalks, Section 98.105, changing street names, application.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Henry Chappelle, second by Mr. Galen Adams. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Vote goes 4-1. And this item is approved. We'll go ahead and close item 6 on the agenda. We are now at our public comment item for the day. Public comment, if anyone has anything that they would like to come up and say at this time, now's your turn. Just come up to the microphone and announce your name and address. Madam Secretary, do we have any online? Yes. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and close.
Hey, Ed, I've got a couple of questions for Lanny. Do we want to cover it in your deal, or you want me to cover it now?
Okay, we're going to go ahead and close item 7 on the agenda at this time. Our next agenda item is the city manager's report, item 8.
Mayor and council, I invited Lanny Buck, who is an engineer with KSA. You know, he's helped us over the last year and a half, to come tonight and to talk about the park and the new archway. So I understood some of you had some questions for him, so come on up, Lanny, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and congratulations for those who just got elected as well. Mr. Thatcher, I apologize. I got everybody a copy of the archway picture except for you. So what I put on your desk there was a picture of the cover sheet of the plans, and that shows the archway that we had envisioned. We did advertise that to about 5 people, and I got comments back from those. The one that gave me a price on doing the archway that was consistent was a Stancil, and they were at $29,360. No, we can't move on that, but just to let you know, that's what they came in at. There were 2 exclusions or two comments on it. One was that they wanted to have a weekly adjustment based on steel prices. So this price did include steel, but if we wait 3 weeks, they wanted to be able to adjust that price a little bit based on steel prices. And the other was they didn't include the lettering that's on the sign itself. They had included the piece of metal and everything that goes on the back, but they didn't include the lettering. I did get with the contractor that's out there right now. We can get consistent letters with a company in town, so that would be another addition to the money that was there. Like I said, I know we can't vote on it, but just wanted to give you an update on that.
Another question we wanted to bring up is that this is for one archway off of 271, and we wanted to ask a question, did we want another archway off of the other entrance?
I think just one on the main, what I had in mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think the main one off of 271 is going to be the one that's noticed the most and has the most significance. Will be seen. This rendition looks nice. I think it'd be a nice added compliment to it, to the entrance.
Lanny, the letters for the archway, are they going to be the same font as the letters on the 2 adjacent signs on the ground? And what type of material do you know what those letters are made of?
That would be the idea, is to use the same font and the same material, because we were hoping to go back to the same developer of those letters.
I think that would be key, that they look the same.
Lenny, if you got just a second, I've had a lot of questions this week from citizens, and if all of y'all will remember real clearly, there's 3 of you got elected, and you got elected by the citizens. These seats up here belong to them. So when I get asked several times about the same thing, I feel it's pertinent to bring it to the forefront. I've got a couple of questions about the park, Lanny, while you're here. We've got $350,000 roundabout in money that we're holding. We released a certain amount of money so we could make sure the subs got paid. Can I ask if all the subs have got paid? Do we know?
I do not know the answer to that. I'm assuming that they haven't all because my understanding is the contract with the contractor to the sub is such that when the contractor gets paid, the contractor has 10 days to pay the sub after he gets his retained release. And that's how he releases the retained to the subcontractor.
But Lanny, isn't it the procedure that if the contractor gets paid, if the sub has completed the work and turned his bill in, he gets paid except for the percentage of retainage? In other words, you can't keep all of one guy's to the end and pay it out, but you got to pay him except for his percent of retaining.
Right, that's the idea, is you pay him except for his percent of retaining. And I need to read the contract again. I apologize I didn't start this one. Normally we ask for an affidavit of all bills paid right before the end, which tells us that they, right before we get to that closing point, they should pay all their subs. And they'll have to get that affidavit to us. I'll have to look at this contract and make sure it says that or not.
Okay, well, I've been sitting in this seat for half of a full term and then a piece of a year that I ran for an unfinished term for someone else. When I sat down at this seat, the first thing I asked for was I tried to break down the pay scale of how all the money, and I sat down and I asked for you to be there. So I've really made no bones about it that I'm not happy how this project has progressed at all. Every time you ask a question, it gets answered, well, it's raining. Well, you know what? I own a business in this town. I can look out my window and I can see that it's raining. So I don't need the contractor to tell me it's raining anymore. I need the project finished because I have citizens that are concerned about it. We've even come to the point where I would like some information on, so I want to know how the bond works. I want to know how that works. If we have to finish the park, we've got $350,000 that we're holding in retainage, and I want to know how the park gets finished. And as we progress from here, I think it's pertinent that we address the bondholder and tell him that we're not satisfied, that we want the park finished. It should have already been finished, and we wouldn't have to worry about all the rain. And I'm not trying to get on you. I just need you to get the information for me, or somebody with the city to get the information for me, because I want to know how we address from here forward. Do we utilize the money we have, or do we file on the bond? I don't understand how that works, but I bet I can be told how it works.
Traditionally, you would contact the bonding agent, and the bonding agent would finish the project out, and they would have to work it out. And traditionally, that's when a construction company goes broke is typically when that would happen, is the bonding company would close that out. In this case, I mean, we are holding enough money to finish it, but, the other option is to contact the bonding company and say it's not finished to our satisfaction and ask them to step in.
Can you contact the bonding agency and say that you feel like that the contractor is dragging his feet to some extent? All I've heard of is that the fields aren't level, the fields aren't ready, the grass isn't growing, the goalposts aren't level. I mean, at what point do we just say, hey, this is enough? I'm there. I'm there right now. I don't know about y'all, but I'm there. And the people that come and talk to me are there. So, I mean, and I'm open to everybody in the public. They can walk in my door and talk to me. And they're there. So I want to notify the bond agency that we're concerned. And from here forward, I would like for a primary of the contractor, not an employee. I want a primary of the contractor to come at least once a month and tell us what is going on and when is it going to be done. I'm ready for that.
Council member and council, I think everybody's feels your frustration, and in fact, I and Ricky and Lanny met with Eric, and we helped. We talked about a plan that would get this finished. It was about mowing every week and fertilizing and spraying and edging and fixing the other little things along the way. And if we did that, and we get in some hot weather with the rain and to water it, by the way, that we'll probably could get this thing done and turned over by the end of June, middle or end of June. And so we have met with them and talked about a process to move forward while they're doing that, and the grass is growing, and it should be growing really fast from here on out. It doesn't start growing until about the middle of May, the Bermuda grass. And then there's some other things. We've got a checklist of items that we need to get done that they've said that they would do. Some of the equipment that they order is just really up to the equipment company, how soon they can get those to us. But we think most of this contract can be closed out in the next 6 weeks or so. So that's kind of where we are. I will say this respectfully, and we can do whatever you want. It usually when you contact the bond company that holds the bond to enforce the bond, it's when as Lanny said, it's when the contractor's walked away or gone broke or whatever, and it's a pretty serious hit on a contractor to have the bondholder contacted. So I think that we're real close, and if it doesn't get done in 6 weeks or so, then we're probably where you are.
If that is if 6 weeks is the deal, I would like a written out plan emailed to me and signed by one of the primaries of the contractor in charge out there that says this is the process, this is where we're going to get finished, and if I don't finish it, then I'll turn the money over to you and you can finish it. I would like that signed and given to us and emailed to each one of us, so we could at least tell somebody we're doing something. When they come and ask us what's going on out there, we really have nothing to tell them.
I certainly feel your frustration, and I agree fully with you. I have been approached several times about some of the same things, and we've been, like you said, we've been here for 2 years now, and this project started before we got on this council, and it's coming close to it's time for us to wrap it up. So if we can go ahead with the request that he asked and make sure that each council member get a copy of that, I'd certainly appreciate it.
Is it possible for us to find out, Ed, via the contract or wherever it may lie, if it says in the contract how long this project was projected to take? I know like when Lanny presents us stuff with bids to do projects, for example, on water towers, he gives us a breakdown of how many months it's going to take to do this portion and that portion, etc. I'm sure there was something of that level or detail that was given for this. I'm looking at this project, a report that Mikhail gave us for the financials, and it looks like the money was allocated in 2018. So at that point, sometime in 18, it looks like we probably broke ground. So we're pushing right at 3 years on this project, which to me that is well beyond the length of time needed to do a project of this nature, even with rain. So I'd like to know if we can go back, look at the contract and see if they provided a detailed timeline in there of the different phases within this project and when they were supposed to be completed, because those projects, when they bid those, they're supposed to factor in rain days as well. So that should have already been calculated in. And I think back to Councilmember Adams' point, I think rain may have been being used a little bit too much or too loosely in this. I know it has rained, don't get me wrong, it has been raining, but, I mean, I work for a company, we do jobs all the time, and we don't let the rain hold us back more than we need to. If we have to, we improvise, adapt, and overcome. So anyway, I'd like to know what the original contract showed that this timeline was supposed to be on this particular project.
We're certainly not here to beat you up, man. That's for sure.
Oh, none of this
we
is,
do have
none of it's directed at.
Yeah, we do have. We've had additional things added to it, and we understand that. So, did you have some, Sherry? Go ahead.
I'm just starting my second term. I've been here 2 years, and one of the first things I did when I was elected the first time was contacted the man whose name was on the contract, and he assured me at that time that anytime we requested his presence, he would be here. And for whatever reason, I think it would have been helpful to this council along these last 2 years if someone would have cared enough from their organization, their company, to have come themselves and been here to ask, for us to ask, and come and voluntarily explain, we just want you to know we're here, and why we haven't moved to the next step is because of this. It would have been nice, I want to be on the public record with this, it would have been nice for someone that was on the contract to have come on a job this size and not had to been drugged or begged or refused to come, but to voluntarily come and say, look, I want to be forthright, I want to be, transparent, and we have hit this snag. This is the most reasonable people I've ever worked with on this council. They're great, they're common sense, they're long-suffering, we get it. But no, and it's not against you, this is for the public comment, whomever may care to hear this. If someone would have come and talked to us along the way and said, here's where we are, here's where we're trying to get to, and here's the bump we've encountered, it would have been nice to have had some explanation. A project this size, it's beyond my wildest. We have a private business, and we bend over backwards to answer people's questions. We show up when we're not asked to, just to give them reassurance and confidence in what we're doing and why we did it or didn't do it a certain way. So I'm frustrated after 2 years of sitting here to have had so little to know. And when we did get them here, it took a lot of prodding. I'm going to use my grandma. I'd be ashamed.
Mayor and council and Councilman Chappelle, we can go back and see the days that they said that they would do the project. And normally the contract, I don't know, but we do the contracts on calendar days, calendar year, and then you can do where they get credit for rain days. And so I don't know what it's set up for, but we would, whatever it's set up, we have to go back and we'll find the days that it was supposed to take to get it done, and then we'll have to find those. I'm sure they're documented, the rain days, and if it extends it, we will have to do that. I think all of us here, including our engineer here, came in about a little less than 2 years ago and kind of in the middle of it. And I'd like to also point out that we understand, I understand the frustration, but if I could just say, a lot of the problem goes back to how the contract was even set up. And it had to do with another council that didn't require what Councilwoman Sproul's asking. And so they went a year or two without much scrutiny and without any. And there was not an engineer on the job checking it, kind of thing, for even when they poured the concrete streets. And so we had another project earlier than that, the library, that had nobody in the community had any, the friends of the library didn't. One guy and the architect decided to do it, and they built it, and they told the building official to stay out. So we have a mess there. This is at the end of a project that was just like the library was, and trying to get a hold of it has been kind of difficult. And I just want to say that the contractor, although we haven't talked a lot to him, but I know that he may be, in a way, a victim of the way it was set up between the architect or the planner and the city administration. And so I just am saying this, that because it's been a long time, and maybe we could forget kind of the situation, but they may be part of a victim of a situation too. So we've jumped in, Lanny has, and we've jumped in and said, this is the way we would do it. I think you're right. Someone said, come here and give us a plan of how we're going to do it, and come and talk about it and ask questions, answer questions. It'd help a lot. But we jumped in about a month ago and said, this is what we need to do to get this thing done and approved, and they started doing it. But having it come back with a report to you and a plan is a good idea.
I will say this, if they're a victim of the way it was set up, you know what, it'd be really nice to know that. It'd be really nice to know that they felt that way, okay? And Lanny, honest to God, if you weren't here, I feel like we'd be operating completely in the blind. I really do. That's when you first started on the project itself. I felt like we were blind. We had no clue. You didn't know what you'd already paid each time, and you had no clue what you was fixing to pay because you didn't get all the information. So anyway, thank you for what you do, because if you weren't doing what you did, we wouldn't even have the knowledge that we have right now.
I appreciate that. And I guess what I'd like to say is, if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to work with Mr. Thatcher and take this list that you guys have presented here, send him an email back of what I understand that's on there, and a list of questions and a list of answers that I can get, and let him spread it around to however he wants to. And then once I get that, we'll document that in writing to the contractor, and that way they can see it documented in writing, as well as I know we'll have phone calls and things too. But that'll get it that way. But if I can work with Mr. Thatcher to get that done, and then like I said, however he wants to pass that on, I'd appreciate it.
That sounds like a great idea to me. I'd like for everything from here forward to be documented.
I think that's a good idea, Lanny, and again, we appreciate what you've done on this project. I was involved in it from the beginning there, and very little information was disclosed. It was like you heard the proverbial like pulling teeth, but you might remind the contractor that they are welcome at any of our council meetings to come, and you might relay that on to them, that we're just strictly, we're here, we're citizens is what we are. We're the voice of a little bit of 16,000 people. And kind of like the Nike commercial said, let's just do it. Let's just get it done, and let's finish this. We're close to the finish line, but until you cross it, we're not there yet.
We certainly thank you, Lanny. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lanny.
Okay. If we have no further questions, we'll go ahead and close the city manager report at this time. Go right ahead.
Could you provide the status of the bridge out by the country club before we go over that project, please?
Go right ahead, Ed.
I just right before this meeting, I got an email from Lanny that that mentioned that we've got approval from the Corps of Engineers to go ahead and start working on do our construction on it. It came from the Historical Society Commission, said to go ahead and go. The Corps, we have to get their approval, but we don't see a problem getting it from them.
The last blessing has to come from the Corps, is that correct? They mainly have to stamp off on it or sign off on it or whatever and say, yeah, we're good with it. Are they the last voice on it?
They are. It once again, they've told us verbally if the Historical Commission approves it, they'll approve it, but they're still the Corps, because I've been reminded.
And we went published for bids last Saturday, so we're in the process of taking bids on the dam leak and the what? Oh, how long is it got to publish for? Or we're taking bids 30 days, 30 days, and then we'll bring it to you for an award, and that'll be both for the construction of the of the dam and the fix of the dam, and also the bridge that'll go. It's one bid, and yes. Yes, and one contractor gets all of it, and we'll, the plan is to, I know there's a lot of requests, can you build the bridge and put it over it and then fix around the bridge? And the answer to that's no. We're gonna go out and get one bid, we're gonna fix the dam and then put the bridge over it. And if we get this thing awarded in the next 45 days or so, it'll be somewhere end of the summer or early fall that it should be done, so finished. And it'll last another 70 years.
We did request in that bid an update on how long each contractor would think they would take.
Yes, they have to tell us how long it'll take. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, I saved the last, the most important thing to last. I'd like to recognize Lieutenant Denny, who's here undercover. He's not in his uniform, but he's the one with the big beard. And he is here representing the chief who couldn't be here. Appreciate him coming.
Thank you for attending.
Ed, do you have an update on the water tower getting repaired? I noticed the antennas are still on the tower that we own. What's the status on getting those off so we can get that tower work done?
Let me say that the antennas, well, go ahead. And
So we met with the owner earlier this week on the water tower because things have been going a little slow and they're behind schedule. Obviously, our preference is to get water back in the tower as soon as possible. The contractor's having trouble getting people to work for him, and also materials. But he has been promising that and reassured that we will get the water back in the tower by July, and then we'll be doing the last of the painting, at least of the legs, probably through July and August.
So even though those UHF, VHF antennas are still on the tower, they're still doing construction on that as we speak, basically?
Right now, they're actually inside the tank. There's some structural repairs that they have to do inside the tank, and then also the riser pipe. And then they will be focused on that, and then painting the outside of the bowl, and then the riser, and then we can get water into the tank, and then we'll do the legs last.
So will they be able to paint around our antennas, or are they going to need those temporarily removed as well before they can prep it, prime it, paint it, etc.?
They're proposing to keep the antennas on. They've submitted some information to our consultant for review on how they're proposing to do that and keep him in service while they're doing the work outside. They're actually looking at doing a rolling the paint around there and not spraying.
Yes, they need to make sure, if they're going to leave those on there, they need to make sure the antennas are masked or covered, because you don't want paint on the elements.
We're looking at actually masking the area so we don't have paint leaving the site and getting the area around as well. So they're proposing ways to how they're going to achieve it and then also get it done.
Thank you, sir.
that's all I have.
Okay, at this time, if there's no further questions for Ed, then we're going to go ahead and close the city manager's report. Item 8 on the agenda is now closed. At this time, we'll move on to our executive session. Pursuant to the Open Meetings Act of Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the City Council will recess into executive session to discuss the following. This is litigation, consult with the city attorney concerning legal matters, and also real property, discuss purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. In accordance with Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the City Council will reconvene into regular session to consider action, if any, on matters discussed in executive session. At this time, we'll be headed to executive session.
I also want to thank, I forgot to mention, I want to thank all my department directors who are here, and appreciate your time and your efforts there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now, the time is now 9:23. There is no action taken in our executive session items. At this time, the motion will be opened to adjourn.
I move it, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Third.
We are
How
adjourned.
big?